I think a lot of times businesses, they have a service or a product, they have to get out and they need a body. Give me a body. Give me somebody who can do this right now so I can provide to my customer. But when you do that again and again and again, 6 months down the line, what you end up having is this workforce of people who really aren't qualified to do those
Mm,
jobs. At the end of the day, you need to stay human. And I know we've heard that, keep the human in human resources, but if you are dealing with people on any level, in any capacity, you have to remember to be human and understand that these are people who are coming to you from different situations and environment. If you start from that point on, you gain respect, you most likely develop an authentic relationship with your workforce. We don't find people work, we find people for our clients' roles.
Angela, how are you doing?
Excellent,
I
excellent.
am I am so excited to have this conversation with you. We've been wanting to talk for a couple of weeks or months, and
Yeah.
we made it happen. And I can't wait to just have the main topics about the challenges in recruitment and finding talent and the pain around that with companies. Because I work with so many different companies that are looking for talent, but it's so difficult with the operations, with the HR. And, talking about you as an HR and operation expert with 20 years of experience across so many different industries. And you also specialize in recruitment and also change management, working with over 50 industries across the US. You have a ton of experience, and I'm so excited to talk to you because so many of my clients need to hear this. So,
Oh,
Angela, welcome to the show.
yes. Thank you so much for having me here. It's great to catch up with you.
Yes, absolutely. So before the podcast, before we clicked on record, we talked about like what is the main pain that people are going through in recruitment. Could you please expand on that and tell us more about what's going on? Like what was really going on with that?
Sure. So I find that right now we're in an area that is in flux. The market is kind of all over the place, but at the end of the day, most organizations, whether they're small business or larger entities, struggle to find the right people. And I think there's a combination of reasons why that happens. Each organization is different. They have their own strategy, mission, culture, and that plays into a lot of times why they don't find the right people, because that culture and that way of being isn't either communicated early on to candidates so that there's an expectation. And when that doesn't happen, candidates go into an organization and it's just a hot mess. But I also think the answer isn't easy, but it's also an answer that I don't think most people like to hear, and that's time. I think a lot of times businesses they have a service or a product, they have to get out and they need a body. There's a cause and effect. Give me a body. Give me somebody who can do this right now so I can provide to my customer. And that's okay in many industries. I come from the service industry, so it's very
Mhm.
prevalent there. But when you do that again and again and again, 6 months down the line, what you end up having is this workforce of people who really aren't qualified to do those
Mm,
jobs. They were just a
mm.
body. And so organizations find themselves in that situation and they say, oh my gosh, how do we correct this? What do
Yeah,
we do? You have almost a subpar workforce because of those habits. It was easy just to get the body in,
yeah.
and that's what it is, a body. So,
Mm.
a long answer to your question, I think it is time, that time element, more time put into finding the right person.
Yes.
And I know business owners are moving at the speed of light, so that's not a popular answer.
Yes.
But in my experience, it is everything. It starts with an understanding of what you need and making sure that those expectations meet the reality, but you need the time to put into it. If I met you and you were looking for a position, I would have a quick interview with you. If I sent you to the client, how successful is that going to be? Not really that successful. You need the time to get to know that person and what drives them, and really better determine if that is the best fit for the organization. And
Okay.
that's in essence what I do
Okay,
for.
talking about that. You know, some people told me hire fast, fire slow, or well, it's the opposite, is hire slow, fire fast. And that conception of that and knowing that taking the time, because a lot of what you said is actually getting to know the areas of responsibility for this position and having those area of responsibility ready so that we can find the right person. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah. So again, I always go back to each organization is so unique in how they operate,
Mm,
and each company values different things. So I go back to the fundamentals of recruiting and recruiting, sourcing, headhunting, understanding what that client needs. And that's different for every single one. You
mm,
know, I might talk to a client who says, listen, I want somebody who wants to grow with us. And they give me, they have this list.
mm,
And I ask them, okay, why? Why is that so important to you? So
mm,
I take the time to really get to know what are those important things, they're non-negotiables, which
mm,
a lot of people just assume, it's a certain thing. They take it for granted. But the time that you put in to really get to know those things will make it a lot easier to find the right people for your organization, because
mm,
coming in that person being prepped for the customer will understand what drives that organization and what truly is important. And that candidate or candidates will then determine, this is a place I think I can really thrive in, or yeah, I don't know, I'm not really vibing with that. And it might seem so simple, but it's very complicated in many ways, and it takes time to get that fit right.
okay, got you. And how long does it usually take for a company to kind of really, I know it depends, but usually what's the pattern do you see?
I always tell my clients it's 45 days, and I'm
Okay,
talking about one person.
one
So
person, of
what I
course.
do is a little different. I'm not an agency, so I don't do temp or temp to perm. I do customized placements, headhunting for my clients. And they're surprised. Some people think, wow, this is so great. It's so fast because, they take so much longer. And other people say 45 days, they think, oh, well, I'm getting a service. It should be faster, because that's how we think. We live in a world where it's fast, 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 do.
Speed,
Speed.
speed. I want to pay for speed.
Let's go. Efficiency, right? Yeah, okay. Listen, I could get 10 people in that position tomorrow. Okay. They're going to be gone in a week. I can guarantee you. If you're lucky, maybe 2 weeks. They'll stick around for the onboarding and training. So again, it just, the reality and the expectations are mismatched. And so I would say my personal program is around 45 days. That gives me enough
45
time
days.
to get to know the client, really get to know their organization, and then start sourcing and vetting.
Got you. What's the hardest? I mean, I don't know if there is, but is there positions that are very hard than others?
Okay, so you're asking somebody who's recruited most of her life, and of course I'm going to say no, because I love recruiting and I love a challenge. But it really depends on the organization and the market. So,
Okay.
and the industry as well. There are two types of challenges. There's an open market, and then there's a tight market. So
Mm,
if a company is looking for a role that really is in a tight market, there's not much availability, it's not saturated, it's going to be harder. You have to be a little more creative, tap into that passive network. And then you have the open market, which also presents challenges because you are saturated with candidates that most likely aren't a good match for you. But people forget internal HR, external HR. Somebody has to go through that data. Somebody
exactly.
actually has to go through. So again, there's that time element and there's that fit. So depending on the role, it can go either way, and each one has its challenges.
That's awesome. Okay, that's good. Thank you so much for sharing. Can you we talked of also be in the beginning about misconceptions. Is there like specific misconceptions that you would like to share with the audience or the people that are listening that you have been seeing over and over again, other than the one that we spoke about?
Yes. So the biggest misconception about my company
Mhm.
and what I do and what my team does is we don't find people work. We
We
find
don't find people work. Okay,
we find people for our clients' roles.
I
And
love that.
those are two distinct distinctly different things. So there's an education when I meet with people.
Yeah.
Job seekers specifically, of course, they hear me, they're referred to me, and the misconception is, oh, you'll find me a job. That's really more of an agency type function, right? Oh, I'm in the market, I'll go to this agency, it's temp to perm, I'll probably find a job or a position relatively quickly. So I don't do that. I am actually the opposite. So I have roles, I work with clients who are looking for specific roles, and then I find the people who are best suited for those roles. I do help job seekers, but in a very different way. I help them prepare. So we do resume writing services. We help with interview readiness and preparation. We help them with their professional profiles. So we help them in a very specific way, but more to prepare them for the opportunity when the opportunity arises. So that's how we take care of the job seeker side, but we don't necessarily act as an agency where anyone can call us up and say, hey, I'm in the market, I need a job. That's
I
not
love
the
that.
type of recruiting we do. So
No,
that's the biggest misconception. And I thank you for asking that question.
no, absolutely. I mean, can you say that beginning? It's like a quote. I like it. Can you say that again? It's not,
Sure.
yeah,
We don't find people work, we find people for our clients' roles.
Rose. I love that.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, the team should put that as a quote. That's perfect.
You're
Awesome.
giving me an idea. I think I'm going to go to Canva and make a few little, social content and post it. I love your
No, that's
reaction to it.
no, I love that. It's a perfect quote because again, it does, like, before finding someone, let's find the role. What is the areas of responsibility for that position so that we can find the right talent with expectation. That is so important because I see that over and over and over again. And what
Yeah.
you just said is the misconception, 100%.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think most people, when people who aren't in the industry think of HR, generally they think of two things, hiring and firing. And they lump recruitment, there's so many facets of recruitment, so many different niches and types, but they tend to lump it all together. And so that's why we differentiate that we aren't an agency or your typical type of recruitment firm.
Mm, that's awesome. Well,
Yeah.
that's thank you so much for sharing. Throughout your extensive HR and operation career, what do you consider your most significant contribution or achievement, and what lessons did you learn from it?
Ah, wow. Wow, that's a great question. I would have to say, first of all, it starts with an opportunity. And I want to start by saying I have been so blessed to have worked with amazing companies and leaders of those companies prior
Mm,
to me
yes.
being an entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was very lucky to have those opportunities that I was able to take an opportunity and make them into something greater. I would say my biggest accomplishment is still in creating teams for
Mm,
clients, and that's across the US.
yeah.
One of my most favorite projects was actually in California,
Mm,
on your turf. It was we had a client, an existing client, and they had asked us to extend services. And so I found myself in California, Napa County, by the way, Napa.
okay.
The other one was San Antonio. And so I went to these places that I had never been before, and I was tasked with creating a network, figuring out the system and the processes, and creating these teams. And for me, it's all about having that idea of what it's going to look like, working towards it, and then stepping back and seeing it in real time. There's just nothing better in
Mm,
life for me to see that. There's a conception, and then you are doing the work to make it a reality. And that was about, almost 10 years ago that I had done that. And I can see it still today, up and running. And it's such a proud accomplishment because you look at that and say, wow, I was part of building that, and it's still
mm,
sustainable, and it's a
mm,
great team. But I do love bringing people together. I think it's not an easy task. I think you have to take time and you have to understand behavior and how those behaviors can work together. And oftentimes organizations don't have the time or the budget to really stop and do that. So I really enjoy that part of me as an entrepreneur and what my business provides for other clients. But I think my biggest accomplishment will always come back to building strong teams for clients.
I love that.
It's a department, a division. I love that process, truly.
I love that. Now, talking about building teams and talking about that in this fast-paced world of HR and recruitment, what do you believe that the most crucial skill sets or qualities that the HR professional should cultivate today or stay ahead and excel in their careers?
Two things. And no matter what time we're living in, no matter how technology grows, I believe that these two things are staples for anybody considering an HR career. The first is adaptability. In HR, you are dealing with people, and people are variables, right? We have lives. We come to the workforce with different experiences, and day after day, things change. Situations arise. People change their mind, change their decisions. And so an HR professional really has to have a high ability to adapt to
Yeah.
people who will forever be changing. And the other one is emotional intelligence. You know, emotional intelligence is something you can go to a store and buy. But for an HR professional, they have to have a deeper, higher level of emotional intelligence to help people succeed and grow and develop.
That's
And
awesome.
now you could be in different areas of HR, but at the end of the day, okay, maybe you're not dealing with many people on the compliance side or the data analysis side as you would be in organizational development or recruitment, benefits even, but it is a skill that every HR professional needs, because you cannot help other people get to where they need to go if you don't understand people and you don't understand yourself. And that's where it starts from. So emotional intelligence and adaptability to me are non-negotiables. I think HR professionals should absolutely focus on those two things. And if they see that they have to improve that within themselves, I would start there.
100%. That's awesome. That's really cool because it's like it's always evolving, it's always growing, and the emotional intelligence that you said is so important to have. That is such a good point. What are the trends that you see right now, like that are emerging in HR, the talent acquisition that professionals should basically be aware of?
Well, right now I'm obsessed with AI. I think actually I'm about to sign up for a certification in HR and AI, which I think I'm a little late on. I've
It's
been
never too
playing with
late.
ChatGPT and all that stuff. So AI is definitely a big one for me. And I think
Okay.
in answer to your question, some people fear that. Some people don't know enough about it. Some people think it's the best thing since sliced bread, but it's here to stay. And just piggybacking off of the last question, many people fear AI because it predicts the behavior of people, right? And a lot of that is great, but I truly, no matter how technology moves or goes, humans surprise you. And I don't think we'll ever 100% be able to predict what a
Mm,
human will do. And I think that's
mm,
the beauty of being human, right?
hmm.
Which is where that adaptability and emotional intelligence comes in.
And how could they prepare for these changes, like AI?
I think being accepting of it,
Okay,
like anything, I remember when DEI came about, like people just didn't know what it was. And anything new is scary to some level, right? What you don't know, there's always trepidation and just you don't know.
exactly.
So I would advise HR professionals, be open. This is the way of the world. And I tell my mom, she turned 70, God bless her. She's still one of these old school people that write letters. She doesn't want to email. And I say, Mom, you got to be in it to win it. You're either in it or you're not. And if you're not, you really lose a lot of ground, and you want to make sure that you're in the forefront. Again, it's
100%.
about service. It's about
Yeah,
serving customers, your clients,
exactly.
your people. The better you are, the better you can be to them.
100%. 100%. You have built, you have built and led successful teams in your career. What are the main essential qualities and strategies for effective team leadership? Because I mean, you could see this, you could see a pattern in leadership and all that stuff, but what are the essential qualities in effective team leadership that you have experience on your side?
I keep things really simple, as I've mentioned. I think a lot of times people really overwhelm themselves with what they should be doing.
Mm,
At the end of the day, you need to stay human. And I know we've heard that, keep the human in human resources, but it really resonates with me. If you are dealing with people on any level, in any capacity, you have to remember to be human and understand that these are people who are coming to you from different situations and environment. If you start from that point on, you gain respect. You most likely develop an authentic relationship with your workforce. But so I think that's a big part, that keeping that humanity in your leadership and management resume. The other is being clear and concise. I think a lot of times, especially younger leaders, they think that if you're direct and concise and authoritative, that that can't translate into being approachable. And I disagree.
mm,
It's like raising children in some ways. I mean, my daughter will be 20, and I
yeah,
remember I was pretty tough with her. I had high expectations when she was younger, but I was approachable and loving. And, you can
yeah.
be both things. But at the end of the day, you have to go back to what the organization prides and values.
Mm,
Okay. If
okay.
that is not foremost and center, you're going
Mm,
to falter. So it starts from there. And there's levels to that, of course, but it needs to start there, understanding this is a work environment.
mm,
Okay. So we have to focus on what the values are and what the true mission of that organization is. Everyone's got to have all hands on deck and believe in whatever that is. And that is the challenge and the success of great leaders
that's
on
awesome.
any level:
Yeah.
leader, supervisor, team lead, management, upper management. And I think as you go through the ranks, I've seen a lot of people completely lose touch with that. They're making decisions, but they forget about the boots on the ground. They forget when they were the boots on the ground. And I
Mm,
always say, in my experience, I've always hired people in leadership who have started from the bottom. And maybe it's because I did and that was my experience. So there's a parallel there. But I truly believe that you cannot be the best leader if you don't know what it's like and you don't have the perspective and experience of what that level was or is.
mm, that's
And
so good.
so sometimes you have people coming in on the executive level who've never really spent time, in the field or, in entry level positions or working up through the company. And they're making decisions that directly impact that group of people. So when things go awry, it's because of that huge gap, and identifying that and trying to bridge that gap.
100%. I mean, the human touch, letting the ego go, being humble, and being human, like you said, and we talked about this, is that's where the real leadership is. Right? That's awesome.
Absolutely.
That is awesome.
Absolutely. And you talk about transparency all the time and being vulnerable. It's essential, and
100%.
I think leadership. So from when I started my career, where, I think the internet was just starting, we had like rolly carts with files in them, so I've seen a lot. I think people could smoke in the office back then. That's to now. I think leadership has changed tremendously, and how people view leaders. I still think the core components of good leadership will never change, and that's somebody who has confidence, who has an air of authority. I think those are important things, not to be diminished. I think that they still stand the test of time, because at the end of the day, you can't call yourself a leader if nobody follows you, right? And who do you follow? Think about the people that you follow in your life: people you trust, people you admire, people who you trust to be authoritative, to lead you in the right direction.
100%. Oh my God, this is so good. This part was really good. Thank you so much for sharing that. I love this part. Can you share now some examples of challenging HR situations you have encountered and
Oh,
the innovative solutions or strategies you have employed to address them at the same time, leaving a big lasting change for the organization? So you can choose an example. The floor is yours.
so I'm going to go a different route with this, because I've run the gamut as far as this question is concerned. But I want to keep things simple, because a lot of times when people think about innovative solutions and changes within an organization, they tend to think big and wild, and it has to be, like earth-shattering changes. But in my experience, it's been the small changes that organizations and leaders have made throughout the process that ultimately makes the biggest impact for the people that matter, which is your employees, your workforce. And so I'm going to go with a service example back from my service days. And in the service industry, you usually have people who are coming into service as their first job, entry level. Many are not, don't have a lot of education. It's usually their first job. You work in retail, you might clean, that's how you end up learning customer service and what that's all about in service in general. One of the biggest challenges in the service industry is transportation, because for the most part they're distributed workforces. So the people don't report to one location. Usually they go out and they're all over the place. So transportation was always a big issue, getting the people there. And sometimes we would have sites that were out in the middle of nowhere. And so we partnered up with car services. There weren't any Ubers back then.
No,
Um, but
no, yeah.
there might have been like local taxi companies or car services. And so we created this network of people that could support our workforce to get them to point A to point B. And then years
Mm.
later, we ended up purchasing a small minibus and hiring, retired school bus drivers that were bored. They didn't really want to be retired. So it was great for them because they could work a few hours. And it turned out to be groundbreaking. It changed so much for us because we didn't have to worry about that transportation issue. Our employees met at a certain place. They were happy. They didn't have the stress and the pressure of thinking about, oh my gosh, how do I get there? I'm going to be late. And so it created a more happier workforce, right? It's like, oh yeah, sure, this is great. They meet, and then there's like that camaraderie. You're on the bus, maybe it's 15, 20 minutes that you're in transit. So what came out of such a simple purchase, and thought, had so much more impact because it took that pressure off of these employees figuring out if they can even make it to work. That's number one. Number two, it created a community of people to and from work.
I
They
love
would
that.
talk about what their challenges are. So it was like a team.
Hmm.
And they helped each other. They got to know each other on a different level, and that just cemented that teamwork mentality that we really needed and was vital in the service industry once they were outside in that
Mm,
distributed workforce environment.
that's awesome. Wow. And do you suggest for them to do more of that moving forward?
Do I think you have to figure out what the pain point is first. So I do a lot of audits with my customers. When I
Hmm.
first meet them, I like to start there, because as much as I'd love to solve every problem, if I don't know the problems, it's going to be hard for me to give you the best solution. I mean, that's
Okay.
pretty basic. So you have to get real with what your problem is. And a lot of businesses think their problem is here, but it's really back here, and they
Yeah.
don't know how to connect those two things. So
100%.
so with regard to not only workforce or HR issues, I mean holistically, you have to get to the root of the problem, and then only then can you think about innovative ways, kind of chipping away. I think, let's not think crazy big, let's think reality. Let's think small, because a lot of times those small little changes and partnerships that maybe you cultivate could be the biggest impact.
I love that. So let's kind of talk more about diversity, which is a really important thing in companies in the modern world and in specifically. So what are the practical advice on how companies can foster in basically to be exclusive or inexclusive and more attract diverse talent? And now we're going into culture. Now we're going into all this other stuff. What's your thoughts about that?
That's a subject we could probably have a whole other show. Well, because
Exactly.
it's so interesting. It's such an interesting dynamic, and I've seen a lot. And I will tell you, I would say all the clients I work with, business owners, genuinely have the best intentions when it comes to diversity and inclusion. I really do believe that. I've seen it, I've worked with them. I think the bigger problem today, even with all the information and all of the programs, and it's out on social media, comes back down to communication and understanding what that actually is.
Mm.
So companies want to do the right thing. They want to be in compliance. So they draft these, documents. Yes, we're diverse, we're inclusive, and, and it's got all this complicated legalese,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
verbiage on it, right? It's
Whew.
okay. We've got that document. Let's
Yeah,
send it out to our employees. The employees get it. They check the box. Yeah, we got the check in the box. These employees aren't reading it, you
yeah.
know, but they feel safe because, oh, we're a diverse organization. You have to get down to basics. If your most entry level person, okay, doesn't understand what diversity and inclusion means, then that is the problem. Okay. And now each organization is different, and how they value that, it's levels, right? Is it front and center? Is it, left of center? It's very unique to each individual organization. But if you consider yourself to be a diverse and inclusive organization that wants to attract the best mix of people and talents, then you have to ensure and make sure that your workforce knows what that means. And I think that's the biggest issue, because when I go into an organization, a lot of times I will talk to different groups and departments, and I will simply ask them, what do you think diversity and inclusion is? And people have vastly different understandings of what that is based
Mm.
on their personal experience. HR is a whole other component to this. HR, and I'll just say HR recruiters. There were
100%.
two things that matter. Right now, we're in a different world, and there are tools that can help. So now you have the analysis, all the data to help make sure that you can kind of keep an eye on that. How diverse are we? Are we inclusive? And that's the black and white side of it. But the
Mm.
reality is, it comes down to people and recruiters, humans. Okay, we're biased, and that's it. And I'm not ashamed to say it or afraid, because it's a reality. Doesn't mean you're a
Mm.
bad person, doesn't mean you're horrible.
Mm.
We're humans. We tend to gravitate towards people that are like us mostly, and I think it's a product of experience and growing up to see that people who are not like you and bring a different perspective or skill set make you better, right?
Mm.
And, it seems so simple as we're talking about it, but it's so nuanced, and it takes time. Going back to that, it takes time to ensure that that is actually happening. Do I think that, I'll be honest, when I started recruiting, I probably hired all the people that were exactly like me, in skill and knowledge, not like physically or anything, but
Yeah,
just because I could relate to them off the bat. A couple of years
interesting.
later, I realized, oh my gosh, I know what I'm doing. I don't need to hire somebody to do the same thing. I need to find all the people that do the opposite of what I do, because I can't do it. I don't want to. Maybe I'm not good at it. But see right there, that example, how much wholer and better does that make me as a team
Yes.
to have people that
Oh my
don't do what
God.
I do? And so
Exactly.
basic things here. I'm not trying to get too deep, because I know I can really get deep, but I would
It's
tell
good.
organizations that it comes down to communication. Communicate what diversity and inclusion mean to your organization and how that can easily be applied. What does
Mm.
that look like? And if you can get your workforce to understand that, you're golden,
That's
because that's the
awesome.
first step. Yeah,
That's awesome. Perception. Perception. Perception.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Wow. Mentorship plays a significant role in career growth. Who has been a pivotal mentor for you?
Hassan, so lucky. I have had amazing people and professionals in my life. I'm going to go back to the very beginning when I was
Yes.
green. His name was Dennis. He's
Okay.
no longer with us, but he was my first mentor.
Mm.
And I didn't realize he was my mentor, but the lessons that he imparted in me to this day, some 25, almost 30 years later, resonate with me. I talk about him often. The people who have worked on my team know him, know of him through that. So when I worked with him, he was a regional manager and I was a recruiter. And he noticed very early on that, like any green recruiter, I didn't want to do the hard stuff. I didn't want to fire people. I didn't want to call people and tell them that, maybe they weren't dressed professionally or whatever the case may be, those hard conversations to have. I would have them. I would not do it, but I would definitely save it for the last part of the day or kind of procrastinate to the end of the week. And so one day he came in and he said, "Hey, Angela, how many assignments are ending?" Because I worked for a temp agency then.
Mm.
And, they all had an end date, but, businesses change. They can change earlier, later. I said, how many assignments are ending this week? So I would say, oh, 5. He's like, okay. He's like, I want you to call them, let them know that the contract is ending, and come back into my office in 30 minutes when you're done with that. And he would walk out. And so, of course, I would feel like pressure, like, oh my God, I got to do this right now. And every day when I came in, the first thing he would have me do are the things that I absolutely was petrified, hated, procrastinated. I thought this guy hated me. I mean, I'm like, this guy's a masochist. Why is he doing this? And a couple of months later, I think it was 6 months later, I had a performance review. And what had happened in that time, which I'm sure you know what happened, it stopped being so scary. And I started developing confidence. And I started to understand that this was easier than I thought. But more importantly, it was a habit.
Mm.
And every day when I came in, I tackled the hardest thing I needed to do that day. And I had no idea that he was setting me up for success. So come 6 months later on this performance evaluation, he said, he asked me for my feedback, and I was very honest. I said, when I first started working here, I thought you had it out for me. I thought, why are you giving me the worst jobs in the world to do? Like I was just, and I was so young and I was so honest and green. And he laughed. I think he was like this big burly guy, and he laughed and he was in his chair. And he said, Angela, he said, I am more proud of your progress than you can know. He said, I know that you have it in you to do all the things you dream of doing. But if you don't develop the habit of facing the fears and facing those jobs that you want to, kind of avoid, he said, you will never reach a level of success that you want. He said, so the best thing I can do for you as a young professional is set you up for success. And that's developing good habits.
Mm.
You wake up early, you come in, you start, you do the
Let's
hard
go.
stuff first, and you
Yes,
face it.
that's
He said, and
awesome.
then the rest of your day, the world is your oyster.
Let's
And
go.
right? It seems like such a simple thing, but it changed my life. It changed my life.
100%.
And it became
100%.
how I trained others.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So,
It reminds me of like one thing is motivation doesn't really last for a long time, but habits and routines stick with you for the rest of your life. And when life happens, you just need to go back to your habits and routines. And what you just said there is it's so powerful. So thank you so much
yeah.
for sharing that.
Thanks for going down memory lane. It was
So right now I want to ask you some quick questions.
Sure.
And give me your best answer that you could possibly get. As COVID happened, of course, business have adopted to remote work. What advice do you have for HR leaders and executives to manage remote work teams more successfully?
Sure. I would say really quick communication, clear instruction of what you want to accomplish. And it might be a little more time, it might be a little more work, but pare those big groups down to smaller groups.
Okay.
People think more is more and better. In this case of remote, I don't agree with that.
Okay.
To have 50 people on a Zoom call and try to get the message across and give everyone time, it's a hot mess. It's not going to work. So don't waste your time. It's better to segment that, break it up so that people hear the message, feel heard, and retain that information.
100%. Talking about employee well-being and mental health are really important in today's world. Mental health is opening up a lot of doors. There's more interviews. There's more like a lot of stuff is happening in this world. So even in other countries, back in the day with mental health was not really a big topic, but right now today it's a
Mhm.
huge topic. What strategies have you found effective in promoting mental health and work-life balance within organization? And this the key is like there's some aspects of people listening to this, work-life balance doesn't exist. And then some people say, no, like work-life balance exists. Everyone has their own perception. So the floor is yours. Just quickly, your perspective on this.
Yeah, I think both are right. I come from a world of this and that versus this or that.
Uh-huh.
And to me, it starts from the beginning. So it starts for me as the recruiter who is developing this relationship with this potential candidate,
Mm-hmm.
let's say. I want to find out what's important to them. How do they view work life balance? Do they believe in it? Do they believe it's attainable? What are the things that make them feel balanced?
Mm,
If they don't like life work balance, that term, what helps you keep it together?
mm,
And the answer to that question really helps me determine the type of environment that this person will most likely thrive in because there's levels to it.
mm.
It's a hard question to ask because each individual organization handles it in a different way. What they offer, what they don't, how flexible they are with their employees, it really is dependent upon that.
100%. 100%. That's perfect. I love that. That is drop the mic right there. As a seasoned HR professional, what message or piece of advice would you like to impart to the next generation of HR leaders who are entering this new field or already have been in the field and they need kind of like just a refresher?
Sure. That's a great question. Oh, I can go on and on. If you don't want to help people in any aspect, HR is not for you. And
Mm,
even if you're going into, areas of HR that maybe aren't as people centric, HR, the heart and soul of HR is the human aspect.
mm.
And so you have to really want to service people, care for people, and want the best for people. And there, again, I can go into each of those individually, but the advice that I would give is really think about how you want to spend your time. And if you are passionate about helping other people and organizations reach a goal, create a strategy, whatever it may be, then this is the job for you. If not, consider something else.
Angela. My friend, thank you so much. This was an amazing time. There are so many nuggets, so many valuable perceptions and ideas that I can't wait to just for the people that are listening to this. I just can't wait for this to be listened to. And there's so many. I could listen to this again and actually get some different notes and different perspectives. And I just want to thank you so much for being on the show. But before we end this. Is there any last message that would you like to share? And we could actually end it with the quote that you did in the beginning.
Oh, sure. Yes. So, first of all, thank you so much for having me on this show. It's great to catch up with you. I've appreciated your friendship. And also as a fellow business owner, I really appreciate your feedback and support. I think entrepreneurship can sometimes feel isolated. You're on an island on your own because you're trying to
Yes.
accomplish everything. Uh,
Yes.
and so I really appreciate your time and even asking me to be on this show. I think
Absolutely.
HR is an amazing industry. Any industry that tries to better others is a great industry as far as I'm concerned. And as far as what I do, I help customers, I help clients who are really struggling to find the right fit for their organization. They're doing a million things. They're either hiring and firing and they're in this vicious circle and they want to just step off the merry-go-round. Call me. I can absolutely talk to you. I'd love to talk to you and walk through how it might not have to be that way. Um,
Absolutely. Where can they
and
find you? Where they can find you?
They can find me on my website, gervinogroup.com. I
Okay.
am on LinkedIn as well,
Okay.
Facebook, Instagram. I'm mostly on LinkedIn with content, but you can call me at any time. My team is here. We'd love to talk to you. And to go back to that misconception, which I love, we don't find people work. We find people for our clients' roles.
Again, thank you so much for the time and the value. And yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
And
no problem. Thank you so much. It was a blast. I had a great time. I love talking about it.